Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So today is another sketchbook session since it is Monday. Now, the funny thing is that I've been kind of working back and forth in my sketchbook a little bit since I have pre-planned certain pages to be for my Inktober days, and kind of like the back half of my sketchbook, I'm going to be working on just like random other pages. Now, speaking about random other pages, I did not really think about what exactly I wanted to do for today's session. So apologies if you dislike watching me do more inking for this month, but it ended up being an inking page. So initially when I was starting off with this pose, which you can see that I'm erasing it almost like immediately, I was planning to do this spread like initially with pencil instead, but then because I thought that I didn't really want to go and put in the effort to actually fully render and shade everything because my hands are feeling a little bit sore. I don't remember if I fully talked about this unless you follow me on my Instagram stories, but I've picked up crocheting a little bit so that I could put Masaki and Kaisen, I was gonna say Koji, but Masaki and Kaisen into their little individual crocheted pots so that they wouldn't fall over whenever I have to move them or if I just want to set them somewhere else so they don't topple over because currently they need to lean on something or they need to be hung on something. So right now they're both sitting happily in their little pots, but I've been occasionally going back and forth and like trying to find projects that I want to work on for crocheting. But because I'm not used to the tension quite yet, my left hand becomes super sore the next day and almost like painfully so because of I guess like my stitches are too tight. So I'm like forcing the needle through the stitches in order to crochet, which hopefully I'll be able to correct in the future. There's like a few things I want to make for myself and a few friends. So hopefully I can get a hang of doing that and getting used to the tension so I don't really accidentally give pain to my hands. But because of that, I guess I didn't really explain it. My right hand has a little bit of that kind of like stiffness and soreness, which doesn't make gripping anything similar to a pencil great. So that's why I didn't really want to commit to doing shading and rendering by doing pencil today. Even though I started the sketch entirely in pencil, you'll see a little bit later that I will end up doing a little bit of like a kneaded eraser pass all over it so that we can prep it for inking instead. So because of the graphite being already laid down on top of my paper, I wanted to lighten it so that I can still have a good view of my sketch while I do some inking. So for the ink for my pen today, I am using I never remember the name of this, so let me go grab it really quick. So the pen I'm using is the Pentel Energel Klena, and I didn't realize that the ink currently in my pen was a different nib. So initially I did swap it out because I had a navy blue ink inside of this particular pen, so I swapped it for one of the black cartridges that I had taken out from previous pens, but I didn't realize, I think this one might be a 0.3 or a 0.4. It just feels a little bit thinner and smaller compared to what I've been using in the past and some of my colored cartridges as well. So for I guess like the refills that I'd like to use, I'm using the Pentel Energel In Free series because they have an assortment of different colors and they come in a variety of different sizes. My preferred size is definitely 0.5. I think it's just a good thickness and a thinness for like thinner lines, but also dispenses enough ink so that I can fill in darker areas more quickly. So while I was working with this pen, I did notice that it was a little bit harder for me to get smooth lines that wouldn't skip, and I was really thinking whether or not it was the oils from my hands again, because that often happens a lot because I accidentally touch my face, I touch my hair or something, or oftentimes it's usually because I put hand cream on, and sometimes the hand cream isn't the type that like dissolves super fast. So sometimes when I put on hand cream, I grab my sketchbook and start sketching, I might be smearing hand cream everywhere. It might be the case, but I'm pretty sure it's because of my kneaded eraser being all mucked up. So the only reason like I kind of think this is the case is that I don't think I was very handsy when I was doing my sketch initially anyways. I tend to put my hands on the paper a little bit more when I do the inking, which is why I usually rule that out quite quickly. But I need to probably either grab a new kneaded eraser or find a way to clean the current one, just because this one has definitely been through quite a bit, especially with like my red lead, some other graphite. So maybe I need to retire this one eventually. I also need to replace some of my other kneaded erasers that are sitting upon some of my pencils, because I basically ripped those ones off from this current one, so they're all of the same, I guess, texture and nature, and the amount of graphite that's already sucked into it's probably about the same. So it'd probably be good to actually change that out. But let's talk about the inking a little bit. So I think before I ended up switching the ink a little bit later because I was getting fed up with the, I guess, what is it called? The ink skipping. Oh, another reason why I knew it wasn't really due to the fact of my oils is that any lighter area that I didn't really erase too much, had a very easier time. It had an easier time being able to place ink down. I don't know why I couldn't say that sentence correctly, but I did end up just doing like a bunch of hatching for her hat just to kind of test this out, and not a lot was skipping anyways, so I was pretty sure that it was just mostly the areas that I erased a little bit more with my kneaded eraser. Now, with that being said, I do end up switching it because some of the areas where I wanted to create darker flat blacks, it was just harder to do it with the 0.4 because it just felt so thin, and I thought switching to the 0.5 would also help me prevent a little bit of that skipping. But you can see in some areas that it will still appear, but I can make thicker lines a little bit more easily, and I feel like they come out a little bit more clean when I'm using the 0.5 versus whatever size the other one was. I totally forgot to tell you guys who I'm drawing today. Now, I believe her name is Kakanya. So she is a character from Reverse 1999. If you're ever interested in what character I'm drawing, hopefully I'll put it and say it sometime in the video. But currently, if I'm drawing some kind of female, most likely it's gonna be from Reverse 1999 because I love all the artwork in that game so dang much, alongside with a lot of the girls are really pretty, so I've been wanting to draw a lot of them. And so far I've already drawn Sotheby and I've drawn Sonetto, so I would like to do a digital piece of maybe Kakanya or Voyager next, so look out for that in a future iPad video probably. But I did mention in, I think, Saturday's marker video on the Shikishi board that I wanted to get back into catching up on Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact, and that's kind of like one of the reasons that's kind of holding me back from doing as much fan art for them as frequently, I guess, or like even like being caught up with it in any sense, because a lot of the characters that came out, I have not caught up on the story, so I haven't felt super compelled to draw them quite yet. And I don't know why the Reverse 1999 characters just like captivated me like so much more easily compared to the Genshin and Honkai Star Rail ones, but I will hop back and draw some of them very soon because a lot of the Natline characters, especially like I guess like the trio, I really do like a lot. So I would like to finish up the trio by drawing Kinich. I do not know how to pronounce any of their names at this point. And Kashina, I don't know how to say her name because I actually haven't met them technically in the story. I still have to finish that Art Conquest alongside with the current one that's going on. And I'm kind of intrigued with the story, so I would like to eventually get into it, so hopefully I can. And then I believe after leaving Penacony and Honkai Star Rail, I haven't really caught up with the current story, so I need to finish that as well. And a lot of people have been requesting me to do a digital version of Sunday, so I would do that probably soon. Hopefully. I'm expecting myself to do it very soon, considering the fact that like I do like his design since of the, I guess, like most recent announcement of him being playable in the game. I'm really excited for him. And hopefully I'm still gonna I just want to say, like, thank you guys very much for liking the longer formatted talking videos for traditional videos. I might make a digital version soon. I don't think it'll be the Sunday video. I'll try to find like something that I want to draw and I'll make it for that. And maybe it'll be almost like a start to finish with commentary, I guess. If not, I'll just record it as a normal start to finish since it has been a while. But I am still debating on what next, like what medium to do next, I guess. But I might take a break from the longer formatted videos. To be honest, Sunday was not supposed to be a 3-hour video, but I decided that I decided that I would just end up talking throughout the entire session, and I thought it would be more interesting for myself as well to be able to see most of the coloring process on the shikishi board, because I would like to use them more in the future if possible. I did end up buying 3x3 inch little shikishi boards. They're on the expensive side because I did get them off of Amazon and I think they had been imported, so I probably won't buy them again unless I can find them on a different website that's more affordable. But I'm going to probably do a test on one of the smaller boards, and then I will go ahead and do a video with me trying out watercolors on the larger board, because the whole point of me buying the smaller ones was to basically treat it as a test, because I really don't want to screw it up, especially it's not easy for me to have access to the shikishi boards technically unless I want to bother my friend Star to ask her to pick them up for me and then send them from across the country, which I don't think is very ideal for the both of us. So I want to make sure that I understand how watercolor kind of works on the board, and then we'll do a more ambitious piece, I guess, on the larger one in the future. So look forward to that, and I'm 100% doing watercolor on that board, as long as I feel like the smaller one kind of works out in my favor. Because if it works out in a way that I dislike working on it, or I find watercolor a little bit too difficult, I don't think I will do a watercolor version on the shikishi board, and maybe I'll just do another alcohol marker drawing or something of that sort. So in terms of what I'm doing now in my sketchbook, I ended up drawing another version of Kakanya, and then I ended up inking it in a very similar way, but I got very lazy. And the way how I sectioned off the kind of like drawings for today, I ended up keeping it as 2 separate pages. So if you've seen in my previous sketchbooks, I tend to do like an entire spread, and I like to ignore the seam in the middle of between 2 pages, because I like being able to bridge the pages together by having a drawing that kind of overlaps that and bridges them together. So I didn't do that this time, so I thought I'll take advantage and draw something else on that and potentially do something slightly different, which you might have seen in the thumbnail for today's video. Oh, also, because I didn't really want to use a wet medium or anything to add tone to this particular one, which I felt like it would need a little bit, I ended up just using a graphite pencil to shade a little bit to create a more sense of volume for Kakanya, because it just lacked a lot of value. And oftentimes when I do inking, I'm always unsure how to do certain shadows because they become very bold and in your face, because it's just, I don't know, inking and hatching, I still have a hard time sometimes just like grasping what I should do to portray either a certain texture or if I want to make things look lighter or darker. So it's still a bit of a struggle for me to do line art sometimes. Moving on to our, I guess, larger piece on the right side of our spread, I guess, I am doing another piece of Kakanya, and then I'm doing inking at this point because I decided to cut out the footage of me doing the sketching because it's usually harder to see the photo blue in my sketchbook. So I decided to cut that footage all out and just show you guys the inking portion for this, and then we'll add value in a bit of a different way, but I'm going to try to do my best to add as much as I can with just the ink itself, because like I said in many videos, I want to get better at inking and I want to enjoy inking, because I don't know about you guys, I think this is a bad thing. Well, yeah, it's definitely a bad thing. I treat Pinterest almost as like my Google Images now, except for Pinterest has become merged into like that social media platform, similar to like short form content almost, like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, or whatever, where you kind of like click on one and then you kind of swipe through. For me, it's kind of like Pinterest because I click on one person's like inked drawing and all I'm doing is like viewing more and more and more, and I won't stop looking at them because like I'm so intrigued by people's inking, so I want to get better at it. So I'm going to continue working both traditionally and digitally, hopefully more digitally, because traditional line art for me, I definitely dislike it less so compared to my digital inking. Digital inking just feels like just normal line art to me rather than doing like actual inking, if that makes sense. So oftentimes if I'm doing traditional, I'll add value, I'll do hatching and all this, but I'm more compelled to not do that when I'm doing digital line art. So it's definitely a mindset that I need to drag myself out of so that I can actually progress into like an inking style that I would like to do, where it doesn't have to rely on color and it can kind of just stand on its own. So hopefully I can get there, and I'm gonna keep practicing and finding new brushes and methods and stuff that I like so that I don't feel as bogged down when it comes to inking. Hopefully that makes sense. So from my knowledge, Kakanya is a doctor, I believe. I think she helps with like kind of like therapy, mental health kind of dealio, I'm assuming. I was like fully enamored by her entire design. So she has a lot of like greens, obviously like kind of like the brown hair. She has rimmed glasses, a giant hat, like I don't know. And I already told you guys about this before. If you don't play the game, it is totally fine. But I highly, 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 highly recommend looking at the art, because the way that they add, I don't know if it's like texture or something to their drawings, there's like a certain look to it that I absolutely adore a little bit more than some other games that look a little bit too polished. It has like a way that looks a little bit more painterly, maybe is what I'm looking for, or a little bit more, I don't know, it's like a little rough. It has a painterly feel. It's nothing like super duper. I don't want to say it's not polished because it's definitely like professional level, looks amazing, everything's on point. I don't know. I just love looking at the way they do eyes alongside with the way that they do clothing folds. So highly recommend it. Just go ahead, look up the characters. If not, just look up Kakanya. So K-A-K I'm not gonna spell it for you guys. I feel like I'm one of those people who cannot spell things without having it like being able to physically see it in front of them. And I don't mean like reading it out loud. So if I need to spell something, I would have to write it down versus just like speaking it. And I realized this became a little bit more of an issue between me and my brother, because sometimes like my parents would phone us being like, hey, can I ask you for a favor? And we'll be like, oh yeah, go for it. And they're like, can you help me spell this word? And it's like a very simple word. I guess like not simple, but it's like, you know, like, I don't know, like a 7-letter word or something. So I will start like spelling it, maybe the first 3 letters. And then my brother would look at me and be like, continue, like, why aren't you spelling out the word? Because like, I clearly know you know the word and how to spell it because you use it in your like day-to-day speech, or like you type it out frequently. I, for some reason, cannot process it. I need to actually just like write it down while I'm saying it, because I either think I'm skipping a letter. I don't, is this dyslexia? I have no idea. I don't know if it is, or maybe I just like, okay, actually, should I talk about this? Can you guys imagine an apple and actually see the apple? Because for me, I think I see the apple, but I'm not fully convinced I am, or if I think I am. Because at this point, me spelling out the word is making me have a hard time and thinking like, maybe I can't visualize it in my brain, thus I can't spell it out properly without having to physically write it down as I'm saying it. So yeah, okay, let's just skip that topic. Moving on to adding value to my drawing. I ended up bringing out my screentones. So I brought this for a different video, but I never ended up doing it. But if you're interested in previous sessions where I focus more on the screentones, I'll leave those videos in the description so you can check it out. But I ended up just adding a little bit of tone to her face. I believe some accessories to her hat and some for like her hands or her clothing, just to give it a little bit more value without having to rely on hatching. Because at least for me, sometimes I feel like my hatching gets a little bit too messy because I become lazy and I'm not invested on making sure that things look proper. So I did struggle a little bit using the screen tones this time around. I feel like previous sessions were not as bad because the stickiness or like the adhesive on the back of these were a little bit easier to work with. And I don't know if it's because of this blade or because I changed to a fresh blade. It was just not cooperating as nicely, so I ended up just winging it and I didn't use the kind of screen tones everywhere. Now, I do have, I think, like 5 sets of screen tones. So I have a very light one, and I think I have 2 or 3 mid-tones, and then I have kind of like a cloudy-ish one, which makes up my 5 different little screen tones. So for me, if I need to use like black or a dark gray, I think I would usually opt for doing it myself in some manner, usually hatching. But a lot of the lighter tones where it's made up of just like very fine dots, it's just easier to use the screen tones. And I haven't used screen tones in the sketchbook, and I don't even think I used it for the last 2 maybe, so it's been a little bit since I've used them. I would like to eventually maybe do a piece more reliant on the screen tones because it could be cool. And because I ended up not giving the screen tones, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm waiting. I'm planning to send another package to a friend and they do art. This is the same person who sent me the Shikishi boards. So I might actually save those or cut a few and send it to her because I have a few fresh sheets that I have kind of left untouched because at the time of when I bought them, I was going to gift them as a Christmas gift to one of my close IRL like best friends, but she's not really into art anymore. And even though she said that she's kind of getting into it, I don't want to bombard her with supplies to be like, hey, try this out because you said like, 10 years ago you wanted to try it out. I'll kind of gauge where she's at to see whether or not she wants to try more traditional art. So yeah, I'll do that in the future, and maybe I'll cut up a few of those other ones to give to the other friends so she can try them out as well. But I do want to do some larger pieces because I do have some of those untouched versions. Because if you didn't see how I was using them for today, I was basically using scraps from previous sessions and trying my best to fit them into particular shadows, which is why I think the shadow for her glove and kind of like under her head doesn't really reflect that well for the shape because I was trying to reuse some old versions of cut up pieces that were from previous projects. Also, initially, I was gonna leave the background just to be white or to do a border, but I ended up just doing almost like a gradation of vertical lines, getting from darker at the bottom and then getting lighter at the top, just to kind of fill up the space because, like I mentioned, I don't really like if my pages kind of look like they're separate. So if I can fill this up a little bit more, I feel like I'm using the space a little bit better than, just leaving it with a gap in between. Writing down the date. I'm trying my best to be on top with writing down the date for the entirety of my sketchbook, so hopefully I can do that. But I think that's it for today's little rambly session in my sketchbook. We'll flip the page for the next time, and I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!